And they call that a Nasara, but they also said, well, they blocked it here, they stopped it here, they stopped it here, the Bush boys stopped it here, Obama did this. Nobody wants to nobody wants to bring any of these people to justice, because even the courts and the judges, which have been compromised by the abolishment or the loss of the real 13th Amendment, the Titles of Nobility Clause. But what is our recourse? I mean, other than 5 million people packing up and putting their arms on and walking to Washington, they're simply not going to do that. If they control the media, and it doesn't really matter, you know, whether the Rothschilds were Jewish or not. Somebody controls the media. Somebody tells the American people what the government wants them to tell it, which is why I started the Free American in the first place. But what's our recourse here? And what happened to the American Indians with their slaughter and the Trail of Tears? I mean, that's basically happening to the American. We've got more people in jail in this country, William, than any communist country out there. It's like, who won the Cold War, man? I mean, you know, Khrushchev said he was going to take us over.
The Cold War is a nice invention. It was another structured conflict. Really, what you're still dealing with here, and all people in this country are still dealing with, is the British monetary system, as well as the floating exchange currency things. Now, what people can do is, first of all, is to comprehend something, and that is the source of law. The source of law is people, and the Supreme Court cases are in place that will qualify what I'm saying. There's many, many cases that qualify this. That's first instance and last instance, is people are the source of law, and they have to quit relying on the witch doctors, the lawyers, and the courts to interpret the law. The final arbiter of law in America is the American people themselves, whether they want to be known as citizens or residents or a whole bunch of other things. When things get really tight and tough, these kinds of precepts come to the forefront again as endowed by the creator of the universe. The second thing is that people still have a right of plea and a right to convene grand juries, and they don't need the prosecutor or the AG's consent to do that. That means that you have two things in place. You are lawful, and you can discover things, different things, facts. And from that, you can determine who should be vindicated and who should not be vindicated. We've written a document called the Declaration of Vindication, and it's out there, including to all people, including you, that we've sent that out. And that is a document that, based on a good, proper discovery, if someone has been wrongfully accused or indicted or labeled as a terrorist or a environmentalist or whatever you want to call them, a community can gather and vindicate that person. There's nothing illegal about it. It's perfectly lawful, and it's proper and fitting and just, and it rejudges that person. It says, you know, they may have convicted you wrongfully, but we're going to straighten that out. And that just flies in the face of a tyrannous court, or a court that really is not even properly convened. The other things we do is we have the declaration by indigenous people, which Art asked me to write. I was reviewing a court, not only a court affidavit I filed in the 70s, but a declaration. In fact, it's in front of me. And it is a Congress and Council of Elders. And it is a bunch of principles. So people need to go back and actually look at their values and list out their values, set up their priority values. And that's what we did in the declaration by indigenous people, and anyone can sign that. Now that we have principles, we have an open communication reestablished. When you look at any capstone military operation, the first order of business is to get a hold of the communication systems. There's a lot of reliance on the internet. I really appreciate it, but people need to become something besides keyboard warriors. and they need to re-engage their own neighbors and share their ideas and actually start revisiting being a community, because the global community and all these things are fine right to the point where somebody pulls the electrical switch on the internet, and then we'll find out exactly who's neighbors to who and how important it is to talk to the other side of the world. The interdependence model that is going on in its enforcement through the capstone doctrine really is not about people, it's about economy. And the economy has been construed as selling the quality of life to the highest payer. Now, that's not my opinion, that's the international banking cartel's definition. Income is quality of life. Unfortunately, they didn't ask anybody about that. Now, money is interesting, anybody can build it, but people need to certainly get back away from having to go to the supplier that's on the other side of the world all the time. And that's the nature of independence. Keep their supply lines far away, make them codependent. So our interests really become, since we need the oil of the Middle East, at least under that illusion, right in the face of free energy and non-point energy. What a fake, what a fraud.
So what was that? Repeat that for me.
Well, you have when you cause people, you force them to be interdependent all the way around the other side of the planet. That's quite a thing. Here's your oil. If you want to drive your car, we got to go to war in the Middle East. That's a nice illusion. That is a conversational fraud. In actuality, you have things like non-point energy and free energy, which actually is in harmony to the Earth and can be viewed in any internet access. You just punch in non-point energy and free energy, and that'll take you to organizations like Thrive, and they're looking at a different kind of approach to living on this Earth, in this Earth world.
Yeah, I have said, let me just interrupt for a second. To what I've talked about and what I've got linked on my side is the idea of Liberty Village. And I said Liberty Village, just to build on the words that you just uttered here, Liberty Village could be done in Fort Worth, Texas, and Austin, Texas, and Seattle, on your block. If you got out of your house and walked over and talked to every person on your block and said, "Look, let's work together here. Let's put a garden in the backyard. Grow whatever you want in your garden. Let's put solar on the roof. Let's put a wind generator on the roof. And let's put a little magnetic motor that you can buy from Australia, because they're not banned by national security from having a magnet-powered generator. Put that in your garage. And then we wouldn't need the government, we wouldn't need the banksters, we wouldn't need nobody for nothing, wouldn't we?"
Well, just
but that's independence. That's independence, and that's what they're afraid of.
Well, independence is an important word. And there's reasons for it. It's important to understand and comprehend, either way you want to look at it, that the indigenous people are on this planet, and Earth people. There's records and there is accounts of non-point energy systems, and these are old. Now, in academic colonialism, the experts, the Rothschild enfranchised experts, if you will, go in and they monopolize intelligence and education, and it's called the Prussian education system. And then you end up with scholars and so forth, and they make sure that the right people get the information, in their sense of who's right to get the information. But this non-point energy thing involves the ley lines, and the ley lines are very important all over the Earth. And what we found in indigenous country in terms of Native Americans is that when the invaders came in and disenfranchised them from their living places, they systematically wrecked them and took them away from key points on the ley lines. Now, this was all over America. We can run the lines and look at where the reservations are set up and how they were removed from one area and put in another. So this is actually a representation of genocide, and purposeful, not It didn't just happen. It's not a market-driven idea. And what I appreciate, and Art and I will have to work on this the rest of our lives, to reconcile and remediate these displacements, that people who were already really well integrated with the living places were displaced, alienated, expatriated, and they were told they're going to have things like Indian rights, and they're going to get a lot of distributions that are very popular now. As people are subjected to austerity programming, meaning starving them to death, they go in with the briefcases and they all sign things like the Black Hill settlements and the Cobell settlement, and they get some nickels and dimes, and they pay their bills, which are already higher than they should be. So you can see this vicious circle of austerity is really genocidal. Now, the IRA system claims a lot of powers. The Indian Reorganization Act system of business communities claim a lot of power. They claim to be even to the point of controlling treaty matters, and they use courts and so forth to espouse this, to adjudicate it. You cannot adjudicate rights in a courtroom. That's a no-no. That's unconstitutional, therefore it's unlawful. But what I'm saying is that it has become so perverse and so caved in on itself that people who are really surrogates of a department, a sub-department of the United States corporation, actually are so deluded in their concept of energy and power that they actually construe themselves to make a treaty with themselves. In other words, an official of the U.S. government, governed by the U.S. government, the corporation, actually will sit there and pretend that it is a tribal council with supreme authority to amend treaties, to make revenue sharing agreements and all kinds of things. Well, what happens? They just made a treaty with themselves while they set people aside like the Seven Fires Council and said, you're troublemakers. You can't make decisions. In the back room, they will admit that organizations of hereditary chiefs and headmen, such as the Seven Fires Council, are the hereditary and rightful authority. But they won't do that because they've been told, like most business communities in their area, and we see this everywhere, shut up or we'll cut your grants off, just as Art has explained already. So we know the ways out, and people can work with us. They can come and see us and talk to us, and get on the remedy, the resolve, the remediation, the resolutions, and all this. But it takes a lot of courage, and we don't see a lot of courage in America these days. We see anger. We see a lot of anger, much anger, and we see fear. And we see people that really have just not taken responsibility for their rights. As Art has said, can we hang on to it? He's not the first. Many people have said, you now have a constitutional republic if you can hang on to it.
If you can keep it, yes. All right. Hold on just a moment. Folks, you've been listening to William Blair and Art George. Go to freeamerican.com and check that out. And see you on Monday. You guys have a great weekend. I'm going to keep you up on a different line here, but hold on with me.
Really going on.
Let me get rid of that one. And we got keep that one on for a moment. And somewhere I've got okay, we got that one off. What about this one? Okay, we got Art still up, Crusades down, William talks to you. All right, we got a few more minutes. I'm gonna just keep on recording here. We lost a few minutes off of my second half of the video, and I'm talking to William Blair and Art George. You know, it would just be, you know, when I planned the idea of Liberty Villages, grow your own food, generate your own energy, own every home, not every home, you know, and Work together in the neighborhood. I said it could be done in a square block. All the people would have to do is talk to each other and work together. Is that a feasible? But the objections I get. Well, the neighborhood association won't like that. Have you checked zoning? Are they going to allow you to have a wind generator?
You know, Clay?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to answer this one because what the bottom line is, before anybody came into this country, we had, like in Washoe country here we have four areas: Hanglaopi, Tanglaupi, Potwalu, and Wellmelpi. And those are east, west, north, and south. And each one of those areas were families. And each one of those families distinctly were Washoe, but they didn't, some of them, let's say, didn't get along because of the differences in each other. But that's why we didn't live next to each other. We have our own territorial area with boundaries, so that each family had its own gathering, hunting, fishing, living place. And so this is what I see this country doing, is that everybody wants to jump in and do these things, but first, each community has to have a voice, so that we have one representation that can come together with the other voices. And that's what I'm talking about, the return of 10,000 chiefs. Is when we speak of chief, we're just speaking of the spokesperson, or the one that stands in front, so that they can say what it is the community needs without all the mass confusion of everybody's opinion. And to see, so where we stand today now, each community, such as Nevada, it has 3 tribes in it. So there's three chiefs in that tribe, or that area, plus, let's say, Reno, Lake Tahoe, Carson City, Gardnerville. Let's say there's 4 communities there, so there's 4 more chiefs in that area. And like we say, we're all indigenous and from some part of the earth, so that now we're all here together. We need to have representation of one voice for one package of community people, of where community is at, so that our needs can be met and spoken for, but we don't have to be just like the other community or do it like they did it, but we can do it how we want and how the people in that area want it done, so that we can move forward with the way that we want to live in each community. And we need to focus on doing that way somehow with our self-taking out leadership, because we can't just live amongst this world and have no guidance and no relationship with the Creator, or with the Creator's natural laws. Because when we first became human, before we got feet and hands to step on this earth and to pick up things on this earth, we were given guidelines by earth, air, land, and water, and animal. They gave us the instructions, so that when we agreed on them instructions, that we would maintain those elements of their existence before us meaning humans being the fifth in line. As long as we maintained that responsibility, we were able to walk here on earth and use what it is. And since we got away from listening to trusted and perfected people that have carried on this valuable tradition, we need to go back to that in order to get back into alignment with human and nature.
I hope we can do that. Is there any are you getting any mainstream publicity, or are they just basically silencing? You're talking about independence. You're talking about independence here, and wanting all the people to be independent.
Yeah. And that way we can be able to take care of ourselves, because our labor force in this country, our economic labor force, is us, is its people. It's not going looking out for something else or destroying the earth in order for us to have an easier life. I think we've got an easier enough life now as it is. We just need to sit down with each other, and the head men or the leaders or the trusted and perfected, so that we can help our communities to get educated and know what it is that we need to do in order to support the directions that we all need to go in order for us all to prosper in the differences that we are.
That's the problem. I can't get any support now. I've got my books up on Amazon, up on books, up on Kindle, up on Barnes and Noble, Book Nook. I've got, so I am making some progress there. But I'm stepping out of the patriot movement because they're so demented. I mean, this is I don't know whether to blame it on the fluoride, the water in the water, or the programming on television. It's almost impossible for me to. I can't tell who are friends. We get people that'll get mad about something somebody else said on a chat room, for God's sakes. It's like their plan is divide and conquer. They want to set the whites against the blacks, the Mexicans against the whites, us against the Indians. They've been doing this for centuries. And they've just got the internet now. That's a tool. That's a double-edged sword. It works for us because we can communicate information. We can do shows like this and get them out that you wouldn't normally get on TV. And we can get those up on YouTube. So,
I think what you're doing is good, because I mean the information is getting out, and a lot of this stuff that's happening, darkness has been in control for so long, and been here for so long that a lot of people have followed that because it's easier to go with than fight it, But I think the lack of information has allowed people to be ignorant. But by you broadcasting this stuff and by William being able to articulate a lot of the design so that both sides of us can really hear what our situation is, that we can actually have a resolve, but we just have to get the faith in ourselves in the hope that we continue what we're doing for those that are starting to open up and starting to become conscious, and at the same time, by darkness or by the negative forces trying to stop us, we must be doing good because they're not as strong as they used to be. I see their ways actually helping people to become more conscious because they're tired of seeing the same thing over and over and over, So it is really important that the information that is coming out and that you're putting out is helping. I believe.
I hope so. I'd like to think we're making some progress. I'd like to think people are waking up. And hopefully it's not too late. I mean, let me ask you, William. With the studies that you've done, the analysis that you've done, I mean, we have basically suspended posse comitatus. They are now, the government has allowed to put people in the streets, and I filmed that in the first Homeland Security meeting, almost 15 years ago, 10 years ago. I filmed the first Homeland Security meeting, and they said they were going to need 400,000 troops to control the American people. Are you talking about the National Guard? Oh no, they're too expensive. Besides, they're going to be in Iraq or Afghanistan or someplace like that. No, we need a cheap source of well-armed, well-trained troops. That could be the United Nations Strike Force. And how do we combat that?
Well, the reality of the situation is there is a field, and however you want to address that, and there are prayers, and the prayers to a scientist are interpreted into all kinds of things, energies and common consensus and everything that goes on. But in reality, there is a consciousness that people share. What is good about the shifting political moments is that this brings people to the point of revulsion. And with the events going on, with the lion running all over the world, and the war on a state of mind, this pretty much has brought the circle full. In other words, as I said, the perfecting the accusations against people. First they're set up, and then you set them up, and then you perfect an accusation against them. That's made full circle. So now the charge of terrorism is at the doorstep of the people who invented the word terror, domestic terrorism, and so forth. These maxims of law can be applied to anyone, against administrators, police officers, and so forth. And the reason is that the source of law and sovereignty still remains from an individual superlative degree of identity. That is, the king and queen believe they're a sovereign. They have faith in themselves being the sovereign. The state says there's one vote for each voter person, so that person is a sovereign because they can cast a vote. The church creates sovereigns. The psychologist says you're the individual, and so forth. So everyone has a continuity in their perception of reality, and it takes a sovereign individual. The people that have created the terrorism, the broad scope of terrorism, taking it to a state of mind, really are demonstrating themselves to be very sick. They are sociopaths, they are psychopaths. It's shameful that this country and any other country would run around the world killing millions of people and attempting to say that we're killing all of these terrorists, when in fact the information is contrary to that. So at some point, the people, probably well illustrated by the movie V, they finally, in a decent humanitarian way, approached the palace, and they just stared at it. And that was the end of it. And what happens is that there's really, as they groom a place nowhere to run, it's called full spectrum dominance. As the capstone authorities create this net for everybody, really it's coming back, it will net themselves. That is the way it works in this universe. And it will happen, and it happens, and it'll happen more. So really they end up in a situation where they're divided against themselves. They hate themselves. They become what they hate. It's really simple in terms of being a decent person with preeminent moral leadership. The papal bull creates the division. The papal bull really isn't what it appears to be. It is from the dark side. It is a satanic ritual, and it demonstrates that the church is divided against itself. The faith will be healed and made right only when it gets rid of its own doctrines. And the papal bull really is about instituting a Jesuit form of terrorism on the planet. And the authorities that do this are the only ones that are remaining blind, or they themselves. It doesn't matter, we can indict and impeach Obama, but then there's a whole bunch of people standing in line that are very shallow in their consciousness. They probably one out of 1,000 are vibrating somewhere at 175 to 250. The other seers of the ages, the spiritual seers of the ages, were up in the 800-900s.
Well, that's interesting that you brought that up, because I've referred to that God is love, and love is your level of vibrational energy.
It is documented. There's several people have documented this and tried to measure it in terms of our conscious as beings. In the early days of dealing with this work, I went back to the superlative degree of human identity. And that was not just a simple idea. A lot of the things that we even looked at in those years were stewardship, but stewardship got co-opted into a proof of concept commercial doctrine where people speculate. It's very important to understand this. The mitigation, which actually has replaced recovery, the derivative speculative